We're going to move on to our third issue tonight, the London living wage. St Anthony's Roman Catholic Primary School have been working tirelessly on this issue for a long time now, and they've won numerous campaigns. And you know what? They can sing as well. So let's hear what they have to say about how low pay has been impacted during the pandemic.
Wow, let's give the children of St Anthony's Catholic Primary School another round of applause. Thank you so much, children, and as we say, we are proud of you. Now, I'm sitting in the East End of London in Newham, where the Living Wage campaign was pioneered 20 years ago. Since then, it has been people on the ground in faith schools and other communities just like mine who have powered this movement. We have sat in front of CEOs and persuaded them to do the right thing by their employees. However, the pandemic has highlighted the impact that low pay has on our key workers who have worked tirelessly throughout this pandemic, as well as it affecting women and people of colour. We would like the Mayor to work alongside those closest to the injustice to eradicate the case of low pay. Let's hear from our action team.
Hi, I'm Claire and I'm from Martin Citizens. The Living Wage campaign has been one of the most successful campaigns for the past quarter of a century.
My name is Angela Fields. I run and own Custom House Workers Co-op. We pay London living wage, which means that all of our workers are equal.
The living wage was born from a simple idea that all working families need and deserve a wage that covers the cost of living and meets their everyday needs.
This matters to me because in 2008 I was made redundant and I was offered 0-hour contracts, which is no good to me as a single parent living in temporary accommodation.
The campaign we started has had an extraordinary impact.
In 2015 we achieved our first contract. We now have 6 contracts across East London and we are open to expand.
There are now over 2,000 London-based employers accredited with the Living Wage Foundation, and the movement has put over £600 million back into Londoners' pockets.
This cleaning co-op means a lot to me. It means that I can help other people to get a decent wage.
There are nearly 800,000 workers in the capital still struggling on wages that do not meet the cost of living, and thousands of businesses who could be paying the real living wage.
I'm Fiona and I work in a school, and it pains me every day to see parents coming in tired after working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Our ask tonight is to commit to making London a living wage city with a target of 1 million Londoners to be employed by a living wage accredited employer by 2024.
And to make the Greater London Authority a living hours employer, including all parts of the GLA such as TfL and its key workers.
We know that if we organise together, we can put millions of pounds into workers' pockets.
Together we can.
Good evening, London citizens. My name is Nathan Chan. I'm the music teacher at St Anthony's Catholic Primary School. Mr. Khan, you have received our asks. You now have 2 minutes to respond.
Congratulations, I've met those children at St Anthony's on more than one occasion.
Thank you.
And they are brilliant. You should be really, really proud. Look, I've been by your side over the last 5 years on this really important issue, and you deserve the congratulations of all Londoners for campaigning on this really important issue. 5 years ago, when I was with you at the Cobble Box, the London living wage was £9.15 an hour. It's now £10.85 an hour. But also over the last 5 years with me as Mayor, we've increased by more than 150% to more than 2,000 employees. As you've heard, the numbers of businesses now paying the London living wage. And that's because leadership from the top matters. And that roughly equates to almost 900,000 Londoners now receiving the living wage. And we're keen to make sure we build that progress going forward. So I can guarantee, with me as your Mayor, we'll carry on working side by side to persuade more employers to be living wage employers. And I think you're right, by the way, that we should also lead by example in relation to the issue of living hours. City Hall already is doing all the things that you need to do to be accredited. So my promise to you tonight is that only City Hall, but all the functional bodies will work towards exploring the accreditation that be required going forward, because I believe we should be an exemplar. I want City Hall to be leading by example, to be a beacon around the world where if you do a hard day's work, you get a decent day's pay. And I'm afraid over the last decade or so, we've seen more and more Londoners on 0 hours contract. We've seen more and more Londoners working in the gig economy. And that's one of the reasons you've seen the disproportionate number of Londoners who are black, Asian, minority ethnic suffering the consequences of this pandemic over the last 15 months. And my final commitment to you during this part of the meeting is my commitment to set up a steering group to look into how we can accelerate the numbers of employees paying the London living wage so more Londoners, in the words of St Anthony's children, can live in dignity.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. It's so great to hear your passion and support for Londoners to be paid a real living wage. Mr. Khan, during your first term, you've doubled the number of accredited employers, even throughout the pandemic. As the economy recovers, we look forward to continuing this trajectory and building a fairer economy. London citizens, you have heard Mr. Khan agree to convening a steering group that will mean that the Mayor of London behind us will mean that we will have more people moving on to the real living wage. Now, I didn't hear you quite say that we would commit to getting 1 million workers working for accredited living wage employers. Now, this is a number that we have set working with the Living Wage Foundation, and because we are ambitious. We are London citizens, and this is where the campaign started. So, Mr. Khan, will you support us in our ambition to reach 1 million Londoners working for accredited living employers?
I love the Living Wage Foundation, as you know, but I think you've got to be a bit careful, because you can reach this number by signing up a couple of big employers who already are paying the living wage. So I'm keen to make sure as many Londoners as possible receive the London living wage. So of course the ambition is to go north of 1 million for the reasons that were said by those on the video. There are 800,000 Londoners who currently aren't receiving a living wage. So that's the ambition, but I think you've got to be a bit careful by chasing the numbers. You might be signing up employers who already are paying the living wage. The real prize is making those employers who aren't paying the living wage pay the living wage and signing them up. We want to address the issue of poverty pay rather than ticking a box, signing up people who already are paying the London living wage.
Absolutely. And will you work with us to target those particular employers?
Side by side, shoulder to shoulder, working together to make sure London can be a living wage city.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. And I just wanted to clarify, you have said that you are willing to work with us to explore the living hours as part of building on the Good Work standard.
Absolutely. Look, we're showing the rest of the world how to give workers dignity, how to get a decent day's pay for doing a hard day's work. And you'll see over the course of the next few weeks, months, some of the ideas we've got to make sure all employers will be good employers, so all Londoners can receive a decent pay for doing a hard day's work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. We definitely celebrate working with you in affording better wages for Londoners and better working conditions.
Thank you.
Okay, now over to you, Mr. Bailey. You have heard our asks, and you also have 2 minutes to respond.
Listening to the children speak reminds me when I was a governor of a school, actually Old Oak Common School, and speaking to parents and seeing just how hard it was to make ends meet. I watched my mother struggle for years to feed my brother and myself all by herself. And for a long time in London, I was unemployed. And in that period, I did a lot of temping work, and we received less than minimum wage. So I fully understand the impact of having this happen. So for me, this is a pledge that I will willingly make, gladly make, because I think we could make a real difference to many, many Londoners. Because of course you could sign up 1 million people, and actually I think you just keep going. You never stop with this, because when you allow a family to have a decent income, you don't just give that one individual dignity, you don't make that one individual safe, you make the whole family safe. If my mother early on in her career could have received the living wage, it would have made an impact not only for me but my brother and everybody else in our household. So I think it's, for me, I cannot tell you just how important it is to support this work, and anything we can do to make this happen, of course we should do. We should also as well look at controlling the cost of living in London. Any bill that we can reduce from City Hall, we should be reducing, because of course it's your outgoings that really cripple you as a family. It's your outgoings that take that money away. And what we need to do is make more of the companies who do the right thing and pay the living wage, and make even more of the companies who don't. We need to make living wage in London the norm, and that means making particularly companies who can afford it, these big companies who are not making this step, let's bring them into the fold, let's sit them down, let's explain to them why they should be doing it. If they can't do it, we should say something to them publicly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey. It's great to hear all the work that you are doing in regards to working towards fair wages. But are you willing to make London a living wage city by achieving 1 million workers?
Yes. Yes, yes, and I want to be clear, 1 million and more. I think if you hit your million, you just keep going. Of course, you get new people joining London, our population is growing, coming in at the bottom, and we want to make sure that we spread the effect, because communities that have decent, sustainable income, it defends them from so many of the poor social outcomes that we suffer from. I remember when I used to run my job club, we were constantly looking for employers who would pay the living wage. It wasn't right to send our young people out or our older people to get that job if it wasn't paying living wage. And we often had to have a conversation with people to negotiate the wages up. And sometimes an employer just didn't know, but I think that excuse is gone now. Let's get London to be a living wage city, 100%.
Brilliant, Mr. Bailey. London citizens, you have just heard Mr. Bailey commit to get 1 million workers working for living wage accredited employers. What this means is moving £300 million from businesses back into the pockets of working Londoners. What a phenomenal commitment. But in regards to living hours, will we work against the injustices of insecure work and work with the GLA as an example to the rest of London and tackling job insecurity by putting living hours into the standard?
Absolutely. Again, when you temp, because they pay you such a low wage, you end up working all the hours God send. I've been there. It's not good for your family. It's not good for your health. It's one of the reasons with the outbreak of COVID, communities like mine had suffered such bad health outcomes. So absolutely we will do that work. But I think also as well, it's the minimum the GLA can do as a group. And of course, you could go out to the mayoral bodies, but we should be spreading that good practice down our procurement chain, saying if we're procuring goods from you, how are you treating your staff? I've worked on many 0 hours contracts, and it just means 1 week you have some money, the next week you don't have any food. We've got to break that cycle as well. We've got to make people be involved in constant, regular income so their lives are sustainable, to have much better social and health outcomes for all our families in London.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey. That is a second yes to our second ask. And we look forward to working with the Mayor of London to tackling all the injustices that working Londoners face. Thank you.